Senpai took my hand and intertwined our fingers, drawing us closer together. Another rumor had become reality. Senpai's face was tinged with warmth, like she was wishing a blessing on both of us. I've been yearning for something like this. Something like what? Senpai answered my doubts with an impractical smile. This might be an odd thing to say right now, but thank you, Sayaka-chan. Right. My voice was slightly low as I replied, feeling petrified. When Senpai said my name, it made my ears buzz. But unlike some time in the past, the sound filled me with a faint warmth. That night, I looked up what the verb to date meant in a dictionary. After I confirmed its meaning, I couldn't sleep for a while. Sorry I'm late, Sayaka-chan. It was lunch break the next day. Having arrived first, I had been waiting for Senpai. We were in the courtyard, just like the day before. Senpai had set the time and place in advance, before we parted. While I was gazing up at the cloudy sky, Senpai approached me quietly, unhurried. Did you wait for long? Just a little. I'm sorry. It's alright. Your classroom is a lot further away, anyhow. And I couldn't exactly imagine Senpai running through the halls and down the stairs. Once we sat down on a bench, near the water fountain. Senpai broke out into a smile, as though she couldn't hold it back anymore. I've always wanted to meet like this. Her smile was buoyant, as though she were eating cotton candy. I see. So this is what she yearned for. I almost smiled too. There is something wonderful about a secret relationship, isn't there? Ah, if this was supposed to be a secret, we were meeting in a pretty open place. Anyone could have seen us, from any direction. I wouldn't be surprised if my classmates started gossiping about me at some point. Sayaka-chan, what kind of books do you like? And thus, we began our conversation, girlfriend to girlfriend. Though of course I hadn't experienced this myself. It was just what I imagined an icebreaker at an arranged marriage meeting might be like. I suppose I read a fair amount of contemporary non-fiction. I wondered how others around us saw us as we sat side by side. Did we look like a close pair of an upper-class-man and an underclassman from the same club? Or did we look like lovers, just as Senpai desired? As I answered her question, I pondered what there was between us. What exactly had changed since yesterday? I looked at Senpai's close-by face, as if searching for answers. Oh, do you? Noticing Senpai's somewhat troubled smile, I realized that maybe I had said something wrong. I was sort of asking what kind of novels you read, she explained. So that's what she meant. To Senpai, books were novels. But I didn't know what to do, so I looked away for a moment. Was it alright if I just told the truth, or was I supposed to say what Senpai wanted to hear? I hesitated, then answered honestly, I don't really read novels. It wasn't just novels. I wasn't really drawn to movies or television shows that were fiction, either. It wasn't that I rejected made-up stories, but it seemed remote to me whenever I tried to read or watch them. But it seemed that wasn't the case for Senpai. He was smiling uncertainly. I read a really good book not long ago, so I was thinking of recommending it to you, is all. Oh, so that's it. I nodded in understanding, just like before. This time, though, I didn't hesitate as much before responding. I'd like to read it. Could you tell me what it's called? I was half lying about wanting to read it, but I think half of it was the truth, too. In a way, I felt like I should try to learn about senpai through this book. It was something like impatience. I couldn't allow myself to remain ignorant of this person, who wasn't quite a friend, a family member. And when senpai started to happily chatter away, once I asked her about the book, I felt like I made the right choice. As I was going home that day, I immediately took a detour to the bookstore when I got off the train. It was an independent store that wasn't too big, located next to the grocer. It might have just been because of the time of the day, but there were a lot of more people gathered in the grocery store than in the bookstore. Welcome! When I entered the bookstore, a middle-aged woman in glasses called out to me. A grandmotherly lady was sitting at the register. I couldn't tell whether the grandmother's eyes were narrowed or if they were just naturally small. As I took a brief look around the store, I wavered about whether to ask an employee where the book was, but decided to look for it myself. Not that anyone would ever guess at it, but I didn't want what was between me and senpai to spread out too much to my surroundings if I could help it. I thought back to her voice telling me the publisher and author's name. I believe the author was Hayashi. I traced the bookshelves with my finger, checking over the author names that were lined up together. I came upon the right row after the third shelf. Found it. My fingertip came to the rest on the author's name, Hayashi Renma, whose work filled an entire shelf. Though this was the first time I'd heard the name, the author seemed to be quite popular. Soon, I found the particular title Senpai had mentioned. When I pulled it down, it left a small and tidy gap on the shelf. If I'd made a gap like that in my own shelf, I probably would have filled it immediately. For some reason, I just wouldn't feel settled otherwise. I took the book to the register. Compared to my brisk and active grandmother at home, the elderly woman in charge of the register was pretty slow at her work. While I was waiting for her, I heard a girl call, "I'm home!" So I stole a glance over my shoulder. The other woman gave the girl in the school uniform a cheerful reply. Based on how close they seemed, I surmised that she was the daughter of this family. I wondered if she was in junior high, too. She seemed a little small, so perhaps she was a grade younger than me. The girl's eyes met mine as I stood by the register. After bowing to me, she pushed aside a curtain over a doorway and went into the back. I finished paying and left the bookstore as well. I wondered if the daughter of a bookseller could read all the books she wanted as I went outside. The books would belong to the store, so I suppose not. And on top of that, just because she was surrounded by books didn't mean that she necessarily liked to read. What might the bookseller's child's cognizance be like as they grew up? That interested me a bit. Soon, I arrived home. The timing of the trains happened to sync up nicely on my way home, so the scene that awaited me in front of the gate wasn't too different from usual. Because I had gone to the bookstore that day, the sun was at a steeper angle than it normally would be, but that was all. Well, it was still midday. The light had started to mix with a bit of yellow. Though it was trivial, there was another thing I never would have seen if I hadn't been dating senpai. I stared at the scene, a bit distracted. Once I got back to my room, I glanced at my bed. I hadn't slept well the night before, though I felt physically sluggish. I didn't think I would be able to sleep much tonight, either. My mind was racing with thoughts of senpai. In the end, I didn't feel like I had an answer to anything. I put down my bag, changed clothes, and immediately picked up the book I had just bought. Before I even started my homework, I was already opening the novel that Senpai had suggested. As I tried to read, I suddenly looked up with a start. It had just dawned on me that I was prioritizing something else over studying. Though it wasn't as though anyone else were around, I suddenly felt embarrassed, glancing to either side of me. My familiar room looked brighter than usual, and I couldn't figure out where to rest my gaze. Luckily, not even the cats were in my room, much to my relief. I've thought about what would happen if Senpai became my number one priority, both at home and at school. The thought was slightly appalling, almost as though I might become a completely different person.